hearing he was trying to join?
Yes, he's waiting on it.
Okay.
I sent him a link. I sent him my link per Trey's request and called him and told him to use that and that you'd let him in.
That's what you had mentioned to me, David, so I tried to relay that to Mark.
Yeah, so folks, I'm just getting caught up on the string of emails coming in this morning on this, and I wasn't sure which ones I was shared on and which ones with Cassandra or just to Trey. So we can clear all that up. But yeah, any of the links that you all use to get on into the hearing here today can be shared with the geotech, and all he'll have to do is just click on the link and join us. That shouldn't be an issue. And I've got a few things to cover here. I think some of you folks are familiar with this process, so I think we still have plenty of time for him to join as long as he's available right now. Okay. Let's see. Let me go ahead and get everyone checked in who's here. So we have Steve Alexander. So I call your name, if you could just confirm that your name's right on the screen and let me know who you're representing here today.
Yes, Steve Alexander is correct.
Okay, great. And who are you representing here today?
I'm with the builder, Peter McGarry.
Okay. And let's go, Peter McGarry. Looks like there are two of you in the room there. If I could have each of your names.
Yeah, go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, my name's Joe McGee. I'm the architect for the project for Peter.
Okay, welcome, Joe.
And Peter McGarry, builder developer.
Okay, welcome. Looks like we have someone trying to join here.
Could be shagging.
Cell phone.
Geotech.
Whoever's at 15136. If you could try to speak. I'm not sure if you're connected to audio. Okay. Yeah. Whoever that is.
His number is 513-615-2966.
I hear him. I can't hear him.
Okay, so he's on.
I can't hear now.
Okay, sir, could I have your name?
Shagging, they're talking to you.
Okay, let's do this. Could you give me his phone number again one more time?
It's 513-615-2966.
Okay, I'm going to try and give him a call. Be right back.
That was
I'm using my computer.
Okay, yeah, it sounds like he's having some technical difficulties joining into the Zoom. He can't really hear us at all. He's going to try using his phone to log on. Let me ask, are you all ready to proceed if he is not able to join us? And we'll need whoever's talking to unmute if they're.
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay. But assuming if for any reason he can't join us or can't figure out how to get into the Zoom, do you want to proceed today, or do you want to continue this so that he can?
Yes, we do.
He can join. Okay.
I think Steve Alexander, who's our structural engineer, works directly with the geotech and the geotech's testing. So I think that Steve Alexander could speak to his report, because Steve, like I said, uses his report in designing the structural elements of the foundation.
Okay, great. Just wanted to check. He is going to try and join with his phone, and if he is successful, we'll let him in. But let's go ahead and get started. Last person here, Mark Walker. Mr. Walker, remind me what your role is on the project.
I am the civil engineer.
That's right. Okay, welcome. We have two members of the zoning department here, Emily Ahouse and Trey Sheldon. Welcome to both of you. All right, I need to read through our hearing script. This will cover the procedure for the hearing. Try and get him in here one more time. Looks like he's joining. Nope. Swing and a miss. All right. I'll continue to try and get him in throughout. But again, if you guys are ready to and would like to proceed without him, let's go ahead and get started. So this is the July 5th, 2023 session of the zoning hearing examiner docket. My name is David Sturkey. I'm the zoning hearing examiner. I'll preside over the hearing. The case before us today, or cases before us today, are ZH20230086-0087-0088, 0089, 90, 91, 92, 93, 94, 95. The purpose of this hearing is to allow applicants and opposing parties to testify and to offer and refute evidence and testimony. This hearing will follow the rules found in the zoning code and the supplemental rules of the zoning hearing examiner. All testimony and evidence that an applicant or any potential opposing party wishes to offer must be presented at this hearing. Okay, let's pause for a minute. Could someone remind me his name again?
Shagan.
Shagan? Shagan, can you hear me?
Yep. Yeah.
Shagan, you'll need to unmute if you can hear me. Okay.
What about right now? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. We can. Can you hear
Okay.
us?
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I can, my computer won't let me do it, but I can do it on my phone.
Okay, great. Shagan, could you give me your full name and tell me how to spell it?
It's Olusegun, Olusegun, and last name is Akomolede, Akomolede.
Got it. And it's pronounced Shagan?
It's Olusegun, but I just shorten it to Shegun, the last 5 letters.
Shagun. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
All right. And you are the geotech on the project?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Just going through the procedure for the hearing, and then we'll get started. So glad you could join. The
Okay.
hearing will proceed as follows. The applicant's attorney, or the applicant's agent will first present the applicant's case. For our purposes here today, I'll allow everyone here that is a part of the project. I mean, really, you can orient the presentation however you want. One of you can speak, all of you can speak, really in whichever order you think will best help me understand the project and why the relief is appropriate and necessary. If there were anyone here from the public, they'd have an opportunity to speak after you all had spoken. Let's see, I will give the zoning department an opportunity to provide any testimony in addition to their staff report. In the event that any party testifies or offers argument in opposition to this application, the applicant will have an opportunity to respond to that testimony in opposition. And then finally, the applicant will have an opportunity to make any closing statements. After all presentations have been made, I will close the hearing. Decisions may be expected within 2 weeks. I may limit or exclude any testimony that I deem irrelevant or outside the scope of the application being considered. I may interrupt any speaker to ask questions or to make comments. I may also refuse to consider hearsay testimony, which is generally testimony you want to introduce that consists of statements made by someone who's not present at this hearing. In the event of any technical difficulties, as we've already seen, I'll do my best to troubleshoot those on the fly. But to the extent there's some defect that prevents us from me fully going forward with this hearing, I may continue or postpone the hearing at my discretion. All right. Last thing to do is just swear in all of our witnesses. So if you intend on providing any testimony here today, making any comments, asking any questions, doing anything other than just strictly observing, then you need to be sworn in. So if that's you, if you can make sure that you are off of mute and raise your right hand. I need everyone to answer out loud. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you shall give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
I do.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks, everyone. All right. Who is going to be taking the lead? Is it Mr. Alexander? Is that right? Or someone else?
I'll take the lead to
Okay.
introduce our team and go if you're ready for us.
Floor is yours.
Okay, I did send a Word file today with our team and their names and their companies. You might have that, I'm not sure. But it's
Yeah,
just
so-
a Word file with all their proper names and their titles.
Okay. So if there is anything that was just sent today, Mr. McGarry, I would ask that you send all of those documents to me in an email. Mark, let me just pause that just for a minute, okay? I would ask that you send all of those documents to me in an email directly after this hearing so that I know that I have everything and they're added to the record. And if you want to reference any of those documents during the hearing, I'd ask that you share your screen like what's just happening, you know, or try to send those to me as the meeting is going on so that I can pull them up and reference them. Because I have a few pictures. I just, after talking with Mr. Sheldon a moment ago, I'm concerned that I don't have all the documents that you tried to send. So please send all those directly to me.
Right, so any documents that I'll be referring to, I believe that Mark is going to try and share them on his screen.
Okay, that's great.
Okay, so Mark, just for the record, if you can pull up that Word document called Tuscaloosa South Team.
Okay, can I share now?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Can you all see that?
Yes.
Okay, so this has, starting with Shag and our geotech, this is a team that we started working with probably 10, 11 years ago when we started building on hillsides within the city. It starts with our architect and coming up with an idea for a particular lot. At that point, we bring in, he works very closely with Steve Alexander, the structural engineer. At that point, we would bring in Mark Walker, our site engineer, and Shagan as soon as possible to get geotechnical precise information, whether it's early preliminary or doing actual site work with borings and or test pits. That information from those are assembled by Joe and Steve and translated over to Mark, the site engineer, to spot the houses on the hillside and work within the geotech's report. With that said, I know that Steve Alexander is on a short time frame today, so I would like to have Steve an opportunity to talk about his role, which is extremely important because he's the one that assembles the work from the geotech, from the site engineer, and from the architect, and transforms that into a workable plan with a high degree of safety factor. So I'd like to see if Steve can talk for a minute.
Sure.
Sure.
The foundation design is a very robust concrete structure. We're supported with a row of piers near the front of the house that extend into bedrock. They're 36-inch diameter piers. At the front wall of the house, they're 32 feet deep. So there's a little bit of a balancing act that we in our design that we like to go through. And obviously I understand the provisions for hillside development. There are a few different strategies that are common and that are recommended or encouraged or utilized to achieve the objective. One in particular that I understand is potentially an issue has to do with stepping the foundation, that is stepping the deep part of the foundation back from the leading edge. And that's a common strategy, but it's not an absolute requirement from a physical standpoint. What is required and what we are doing is reaching through the bedrock material, through the overburden material and extending into the bedrock. So in a sense, though, we actually do have a stepped strategy, and we're utilizing a stepped strategy in that we're setting our front wall to the rear slightly, and our second floor is actually projecting forward of the foundation wall itself. So it's not a dramatic step back like a full garage step would be, but it's a way of achieving some setting back of the lower level. In our particular case, we have a 20-foot tall concrete wall, 12 inches thick, heavily reinforced, 2 layers of reinforcement. And again, below that, the piers are another 32 feet long. So we would have a substantial amount of drilling regardless. Then we're able to, with 36-inch diameter piers, we're able to reinforce them quite robustly. So we are able to satisfy that requirement. The concrete walls are so, there's a jog in the wall. We have actually in between the building units, we have other wing walls, so to speak, that actually we're providing a continuous concrete retaining structure founded on deep piers across the entire site, except where the driveway is. And that leads me to our other one of the other objectives, and I understood it to be potentially a greater objective, was to limit the number of curb cuts. And by utilizing basement space, we actually have the garages in the basement. We have one curb cut. All these units are going to load from the rear. And, we're able to do that and keep the front of the building back from the street a little bit. So I think the greater objective of limited curb cuts is probably, or arguably, a greater benefit. Again, the deep pier system, by its very nature, we're actually reinforcing the slope. We are eliminating or reinforcing against a potential slide plane, which is, I don't know that there was a lot of creep going on, but obviously in every hillside in Cincinnati, we have a concern about creep. But we're stitching our 20-foot tall, heavily reinforced concrete walls to the bedrock and interrupting any plane of sliding that might develop with our series of 36-inch diameter piers that are basically 8 feet on center. So we really are introducing a very, very robust barrier on the slope. We're well founded with that barrier. We're heavily reinforced. And really, we're taking load off of the slope by eliminating the soil and extending all of our new weight in the front half of our buildings onto the bedrock. So, from a structural standpoint, we're doing a very generous, I don't mean that in a charitable sense, but we're doing a very substantial slope improvement. And it's quite comprehensive. So anyway.
So Steve, can you talk about how you've got the buttress wall, which is the driveway basically, right?
Right. Yeah, that's
And
the only
then
part that, in a sense, we're not getting to, but we're, buttressing every other part of the slope continuously on both sides of the driveway wall. So yes, we leave that access, but again, that's in further service of the objective of limiting the curb cuts.
And then can you speak to linking the individual? One foundation is 2 units.
Right.
Then we link the other abutting foundations with another robust wall.
That's
as
right.
we
We
call
have 10 feet between each of the dual building or the dual unit structures. There's a massive concrete structure that's about 50 feet wide. And then there's a 10-foot gap between the 2 buildings. But we are bridging that gap with a retaining wall that is tied to the piers. So that's where we're introducing a continuous concrete structure with piers virtually every 8 feet, although we do have a 10-foot gap in between the buildings. But we have piers, we have two sets of piers on each side of that gap. So we have a large number of piers for each section of wall.
And then within Shagan's report, when Shagan did drilled borings on that site prior to us engaging this way to go about it, the site itself was sloping pretty severely across the site, except there was a couple of planes where existing houses were there, but they had been abandoned and removed over time by either the city before we got there. So we were dealing with an existing pretty substantial slope going from Eastern Avenue to the south when we got on the site. And then what the soils report revealed was a lot of colluvian, some old foundations and other stuff which had to be removed pretty much anyway for us to bear onto something substantial to hold the foundations.
Yeah, we had, on one boring, we had 15 feet of fill. And I do not have somehow, Mark, this is a good graphic, but I can't see my boring logs right now. So, but yeah, I mean, as Peter was referring, there was a lot of, I'll call it debris. It's just, whether it was rubble or old stone foundations, they had to be removed anyway. So between removing the material that we wanted to get out of our way and knowing that we wanted to extend to the bedrock regardless, and then now that we have the garages in the basement, it's a balancing act of the amount of space that we want for the program, the use of the building, keeping the driveways off of the street and limiting them to just one entry point, and then concrete walls. I mean, honestly, the concrete walls, they're a low-tech solution. They're pretty redundant in the sense that it's 12-inch wall, 2 layers of reinforcing. So it wasn't a technical stretch to make the walls work once we had a series of 36-inch diameter piers to bedrock underneath them.
Okay. Any questions for Steve? I know that he might have to chime out. He's got.
I probably have to get out at 1:45.
Okay.
I don't think that I have any questions for him right now. No.
Okay, Shagan, could you speak to the geotech report and the process that we use to go out and do test borings along the site at 2 different elevations? Or did we lose him again?
He's there. He just needs to unmute.
Okay.
Sir Shagan, you have to unmute.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me now? I think I'm on mute. I'm muted now.
No,
We
you're
can hear
good.
you now.
Oh, okay. When you're looking at the thing, what the city wants to accomplish with steps, foundation, the typical slope that you can do that with is a natural slope where bedrock is more or less determined at a certain elevation, and the bedrock is not that deep that you can bench your foundation to. Because anytime you're building on the hillside in any part of Cincinnati, you have to build your building to be locked into the bedrock if you don't want it to slide. So if you have a natural slope, which is typical in Cincinnati area, where bedrock is generally within about 10, 15 feet, ideally you can do the kind of benching that the city is wanting to do, because in a situation like that, you can easily achieve bearing in bedrock by benching down the slope. But at this particular site, the site has been redone by the city, probably many times over, because on that site, we hit about 15 to 20 feet of fill, and it's all junk fill that I think there were buildings there before. They removed the building, and then people start dumping stuff there that over the years, the whole place was just filled with junk. So on a site like that, it is not ideal for you to do any benching because you don't have any good material that you can bench into. And then secondly, you have the street that you need to support. So if you don't do the foundation correctly and you try to achieve what the city wants, you may jeopardize that street, Eastern Avenue. You may cause it to move and slide. So that's why we designed the work that we did there the way we did, because one, we have not only 15 to 20 feet of fill that is all rubbish. Under that, we have colluvium soils extended several feet until we hit bedrock. And that colluvium soil is essentially soils that have been moved from the top of the hill over the years, many years, down into that area. And then people start dumping material. They initially built on it, they removed buildings, and then people start using the place more or less as dump yard until we got there and we did the borings and we recommended what needs to be done in order to properly build on the hillside. So this particular site is not very ideal for the type of benching that you want to do into the hillside. Because one, the slope there is no longer natural, it's all man-made, and it was built with rubbish, and the slope wasn't gradual, it just dropped off. Once you leave Eastern Avenue, you have a little bit of flat area, and then beyond that, you just drop down steeply to a lower grade. So when you have, and it's all fill, and it's all junk fill on that slope, when you have a kind of a topography like that, you can't do any benching and be successful. So the best way to do it will be what we did. We took out all the fill, get down into the natural colluvial soil, and then then we held back the street with a retaining wall and piers that goes down into the bedrock. So essentially the house is acting as a retaining wall system to hold back not just not just Eastern Avenue, but the entire hillside is being held back by those houses. So the way that those houses were designed and are built is helping the street, and it's helping the entire hillside. So once those houses are there, you're not going to have the kind of movement that you see in other parts of the hill. If you go on Eastern Avenue between Stanley Avenue and downtown, where all those houses are moving and going down the river, you won't see that here, because those houses will help the entire slope to be stable. So that's why we had the design the way we did. So you don't have any other way to do it. You can't bench it more than we try to do, as explained to you by the architect. You can't have any bench better than that. It's not going to work. It's just going to create the same kind of situation that you see on the Eastern Avenue towards downtown, where all those houses are moving, cracking, and there's big problems down in that area. So,
Okay. So Shagan,
yes,
basically in layman's term on your report, you drilled down some 50 feet on some of those with the test borings.
yes,
And so but the first 15 to 20 was fill,
yes,
that was man-made fill, not natural colluvium. And
yes.
then,
Those were man-made fill, and not
So-
just ordinary fill. They were just dump fill. It's full
Right.
of all kinds of junks.
right, so
Yeah.
we went down the 20 feet, which
Yeah.
was basically 2 stories below the curb.
Yes,
And then you drilled piers down another 30 feet. So we were basically 50 feet below the curb, plus what you socketed into bedrock.
yes,
And so go on a sheer plane, most of that was junk. And then we got into the cluvia, and then you socketed them into bedrock. With Steve's recommendation, on top of your piers, we pour mud sills, and then we build walls that are tied into each pier
yes.
with buttress walls, not just the straight wall that runs
No,
parallel,
yeah, they're
but a
properly
buttress wall
buttressed.
that
Yeah.
comes off of the center of the 2 units, and the end walls all act like a buttress. So you have this foundation that is basically working to not just hold our house, but to hold any future movements of Eastern Avenue.
Yes, yes. You see the way the houses are designed, it's not for the benefit of the house. Actually, because the houses don't have much load, but mainly it's for the benefit of the street and the hillside. Because the houses, the way it's designed, is like you build the houses as retention system to hold back the street and the hillside. That's what the houses are doing. So it's not just that we're building the houses for the people. They work there. I would say more than 70% of those houses is for the benefit of the street and the hillside. The other 30% is only for the benefit of the houses. But there's no way you can build the houses there without making the sacrifice, because if the hillside and the street is unstable, then the houses will become unstable. So that's basically what those houses are doing. And that's why we designed and built it the way it is.
Let me just see if
Shagan, real quick,
Yes.
just more generally speaking, you're saying that this is the requested excavation and fill is necessary in order to put any, or to have any development there. If
Yes,
you're going to maintain and protect the hillside.
yes.
Steve, before you chime out, do you have any questions or, challenges to what Shagan has said? You're muted.
Thank you. I agree that the nature of the slope, the soils on the slope lent themselves to a deeper excavation. And again, what we designed provides substantially more protection of the street. That's absolutely true. I think it's a matter of semantics. There's more than one way to skin a cat, but certainly the makeup of the slope materials lent themselves to the strategy that we used. And absolutely the 20-foot tall continuous concrete wall with, the buttresses on this, the perpendicular sections are 15 and 18 feet long. So we're buttressing this wall every 10 or 24 feet. We've got a perpendicular buttress on every one of these, every section of this wall. So again, that's part of I think it's a totally fair characterization of a very robust retaining structure. So I agree.
Thanks, Steve.
Yeah, I will chime out here if that's okay with everybody, unless there's any questions.
I don't have any at this time.
Very good. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate it.
Right.
With that, I'd like to introduce Mark, who's the site engineer. He's also the surveyor. He lays out our piers. He lays out the walls. He lays out the cut and fills, all of that particular stuff. I think you witnessed the excavation of all these because you were right on site. And he's also a structural engineer. I think all these guys are way overeducated. I think we're paying them too much, but I'd like to have Mark chime in for a minute.
Except me, you're not paying me enough.
Mark?
Peter, what specifically do you want me to address? I think they did a pretty good job on the foundations.
Yeah, I guess that the site, the buildings, the heights, to get, because we go 2 stories and that only just gets us up to the curb elevation.
Right. I guess we could, I could speak to the heights a little bit. So much of the heights and the height variances that are necessary are determined from the existing grade that's out there. So because we've got only a 2-story above the curb in the front for our proposed building, which normally wouldn't be higher than 35 feet. It's not higher than 35 feet, but because of the way that the site was left from the existing demolition, with the steep slopes going down, and we measure the heights, or we're required to measure the heights for the variances from the existing grade. So because our house is set back in a location where we were already on the downside of that slope, that means that the heights are measured not from our first floor, but from whatever the existing grade happened to be at that particular building location. So that caused quite a bit of height variances that wouldn't have been necessary if the site would have already been graded correctly.
And I think staff alluded to that quite well in the report, the challenges of, having to use that dimension below the curb. But go ahead, I'm sorry.
And that's why all these buildings require different height variances, but yet they're all the same building with the same height above the street. And so, I think if it was graded a little bit different, we might not need any height variance at all. And at the most, we would need a little bit of a height variance, but because of the way the slopes are, that's why we've got the request for the height variances as they sit.
Mark, could you pull up the shot of the kind of with the finished trim for 4189 and 4191? It's a photo taken
Let's
last
see,
week.
I will try. Let me, you said it was, what was the address?
It was an email that I sent with two photos. Front
Remember what the
elevation.
file?
Yep, that's it. Front elevation right there. Okay, that's perfect. So this and the photo that's next to it, Mark, is just kind of a shot from more of an angle showing the no, that's different ones. But yeah, let's just go back to this one for now. So this is 4189, 4191, which was approved in our first go around with the Planning Commission some 2 years ago.
Yeah,
And it's take
I don't want to go on too much of a tangent here with the planning commission stuff, but
Okay.
I think I would appreciate some background on what exactly happened with planning, what was approved by planning, and
Okay,
why the rest of these were
yeah,
not
we're
included.
gonna get into that. I think that
Okay.
this will help right now. So this is the way that the buildings look from the street. You can see we're 2 stories above the curb. And then if you look at the top, that's the elevator shaft that comes into play like 40, no, not 40 feet, 30 feet back at the front of the house. And so with this, Mark, we have one other, it was my highlighted report from the staff report, pages 8 and 9, with the sections highlighted in red. So we can verify this through some means because it was alluded to in the staff's report from the previous James Weaver, I believe, talked to zoning about this. But what happened is I believe that we could have got approval for all 12 lots in our last meeting. The area that I have highlighted it was the area of contention that the city pointed out. If they gave us approval for buildings A and B, or all the buildings, that we could come back and build in that zone that is highlighted out. And we don't want to build into that zone. We could come up with a simple way that says we're not going to, because if they had approved all of it at the Planning Commission, then we could have applied our next go around with another story out front, which was not our intention. It's just the way that the box is measured, that parallelogram with the city. So what we were willing to do at the time is say, okay, well, give us approval for our first building so we can get going, and then we'll come back with some modifications, because we want to change the elevations a little bit, but we don't necessarily want to do that anymore, because we can change the materials on the front elevation and come up with a product that fits in with what we're doing. That's a clear example right there, where we could still put a little gable out front roof without violating that spot that I have highlighted for the one. Yeah, right. Well, that's what I'm saying, Joe, is that we could put a little more robust, but we really like the way this building is turning out. So we did not plan, and we're willing to tell the city, we will not, under this approval, if we were fortunate enough to get that today, we would not build in that unless us or another builder came in and made a whole application to get into that zone. Now, I know that one of the city's challenges also was what we own. We have a 53 lot subdivision right across the street now that is at the real estate department. And Mark, let's throw up that diagram that you did to show the sections from Tusculum Ridge South to Tusculum Ridge North. Because the city rightfully is concerned about what happens above the street. And we happen to control it. And what we're doing, what this shows is a section of Tusculum Ridge South, which is to the right, and Tusculum Ridge North proposed, which is up there. And up there, because of the way that this parallelogram is figured, we wouldn't need a variance for the height on these ones up there. And we still see out over the top of the houses down below. Now, the grade on this site, it's an enormous site. It's 53 lots wide. The grade changes, fluctuates, right, Mark, up and down a little bit.
Right.
But for overall, I know the staff rightfully has a big concern about what we will be coming to ask for up above. At this point, we have a plan designed. It's a great plan with 3 different elevations. We can change the facades. We're planning on doing the same thing over and over and over again, going down the street on 35-foot lots with limited curb cuts again. I think, how many curb cuts on that 52 lot, Mark?
I think it's 4.
4. So for 53 houses, we have at the city's request on the high side also, we just have 4 access points where people can drive off of Eastern Avenue, get out of traffic, drive along a private drive in front of the houses and into their individual garages. Mark, do you have an elevation that you can just pull up of those just to finalize?
Of which one?
The Tusculum Ridge North plan. I thought I sent those out this morning.
Oh, did you have that?
Yeah. Oh, you can pull up the 53 lot. That's a good example. So recently we picked up another piece of property which allowed us to tie in. We had almost 42. Now we have 53. So this is just across the street from this site, and obviously many other sites going along the way. This is one that we would, we'll go through the same process. This one, obviously, we go through the planning commission first with Hillside. It is Hillside. But we've got, like Shagan and Steve have talked to, robust foundations and retaining walls designed to hold the upper portion of the hill, which is the city's baby Columbia Parkway. So we won't be messing with Columbia Parkway. We've been in meetings with the city on how to stage our development. So if we're not going to cut 53 lots out at once, if we're going to build 12, we'll put in the tangent wall, which is a pier behind piers, drilled into bedrock that'll be behind the houses prior to us doing any excavation other than to get up to put the pier wall in. So that will allow us to put these houses in behind that. So this, I don't want to get too far off on Tusculum Ridge North because we're going to go through this whole process, but we are coordinating with the same team, and we're working with the city geotechs. We're working with the building department, going through coordinated site reviews, which are very detailed, so that we can make sure that we don't mess with the baby Columbia Parkway like has happened in other sites in the city. Did you find those plans yet, Mark?
Which ones are you looking for?
The Tusculum Ridge plans are, the Tusculum Ridge North.
Tusculum Ridge North. Okay.
Yeah, the preliminary.
It should say preliminary plans in one of those emails.
I've got them from when I sent them to you. I can pull them up real quick.
Okay.
Part of the question, this is Joe McGee. Part of the question in some of the review was the elevator shafts. Would they be blocking any of the views from the Tusculum North site? As you can see from the elevation that's up there, those elevators sit back. They're relatively a small area compared to the overall building, and realizing the next building is 10 feet away, plus again, that distance to the elevator shaft. So it's very open as far as the views. So those elevator shafts are really not going to come into play as far as blocking any major views or anything.
Peter, are you talking about the architectural drawings?
The preliminary, you know, with the dog and the people walking by.
Okay,
The little
yeah.
rendered
Yeah, okay.
elevation.
I think it's important enough to show that this is both sides of the street. We're trying to come up with, you know, a structure that's going to fit in with what we're doing. All right, so Mark, I'm going to move on. So unless you have any more particular, so it came down to in the planning commission meeting when I believe it was either James Weaver or Trey brought up that if they are approved, that would be giving us approval to be doing stuff in that zone that I put a red bar there. That's it right there. So this is a hip elevation or flat roof elevation. Mark, you got another one?
Yep.
This is the hip elevation, and these are on 35-foot lots. We still have, if you look behind the houses on the 10-foot between them, we are linking each foundation on this on the high side also. That's a concrete wall behind, which allows us to create one solid bearing wall. And then you have the taller elevation, Mark, which with the upper terrace. No. Not that one. That one. Okay, so that one has an upper terrace where again we set the building, the space back towards the back of the house on the upper floor to work within that the city's parallelogram, which the one that Mark showed you that he did this morning.
The cross section.
The cross section is based on this elevation, working within the city's framework. We're not going any taller than this. Yeah, so that is that elevation and shaded, working in conjunction with our view in line of sights with the stuff that's on the low side. So to go back to the planning commission meeting, we did need to get the building into the ground because we're launching. We have enough ground on Eastern Avenue to build 72 lots. We've already completed one at 4212, which was on a double lot. It was on a 52 lot. That was completed about 1.5 years ago. We did go through the hearing process for Hillside on that. A wonderful house. The first thing on Eastern Avenue, this section of Eastern Avenue, between Airport Road and Terry Turf Club, it's new and probably 120 years on Eastern Avenue. We're going to be here for 5 or 6 years. We don't mind going through the processes. We've talked with some of the city staff about once we go through the process on the high side and low side, maybe we can form the rules that say, if we follow those rules, we can do the same thing over again under the direction of the city and the geotechnical staff and the structural engineer staff. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to build the exact same building next door to the one that we have under construction that you saw the elevations of next door to it. And then we have one more building on that side of the driveway. And then we would have, Mark, can you pull up a section just showing the overall development, the 12 lots with the driveway? You might not show the 6 buildings, but yeah, it's the first sheet of that plan, I think. Yeah, second sheet. Okay, so that one's fine, Mark. So this shows the driveway in between. To the far left is a building that is almost finished under construction. The first one that we're going to build these in order. So the next one, building 2, is the one that we will make application for just as soon as we can get through the approval process to build that one. And then hopefully by January or so, we'll build the other one and finish that side of the street. Then next year, we would build the other 3 buildings out, depending on velocity of sales. Mark, there's one more thing that I'd like you to show, unless anyone has any questions about that. So these units are all meant to work together to hold the hillside. So the holding force is all 3 buildings bonded together with piers, buttress walls, and as Steve would say, a robust foundation. Mark, one other thing, can you pull up Gail's landscape plan? It kind of shows a little different. Those were part of that emails that I sent this morning. Yeah, there you go. No, one down. You had it. That's not it. There you go. So this depicts the site overall a little better. We do, with that retaining wall that links the buildings, we do end up with space between the buildings that'll be landscaped, lawn area, a fence out front, a lot like they've done on Riverside Drive with some of the developments there. And we're going to pull the same type of theme going down the street. So it's a 5 to 7 year project for us. But that's why we had to go back again with the same thing, the same elevations, the same foundation, the same technical crew that we use to get this stuff done.
Okay, so Mr. McGarry, just to be clear, you the 2 homes that are almost complete on the site, those went through Planning Commission, and the cut fill and the height relief is more or less identical to what you're requesting today.
That's absolutely correct, with the change of where they calculate the existing grade to the curb. That adds to the overall height of the parallelogram.
And the design is identical?
Yeah, we've got some interior stuff that we're working on that is just improvements of where we have a hall and a couple of things like that. But the exterior, we might be changing some exterior elements to make them a little different from the building next door, but the height exactly the same.
Okay. And Mark, could you dig in a little bit more on your initial comments about why you believe the height variance is necessary? I think you were referencing existing grade versus what the grade is now. Could you talk some more about that? Mark, I can't hear you for some reason. Doesn't look like you're muted, but I cannot hear you. Can anyone else hear Mark?
No.
No. He's not speaking.
No. Still no. Mark, maybe check your audio settings if the microphone may have switched somehow when you were sharing your screen.
Yeah, good point. You know, if we go to page 8 and 9 of the city staff report, I might be able to help with that while we're waiting on Mark.
Sure.
Or Joe. Joe is our architect, is right here. Let's wait until they pull up this report.
Part of what the conditions are on the existing site is to the east of this site, the contours are lower than they are at the building that we're doing right now. So when you take the parallelogram and put it at the existing grade, our buildings are higher because they will all be the same elevation at the street, even though the grades on the last lots 11 and 12 are lower. So it makes our building appear that it's violating the height, height restrictions, I guess, at a greater distance. And they do, according to, you know, the way the parallelogram is constructed, but in actuality, the photograph we showed you of the existing building will be the same all the way down the street. So the height will be the actual height of the second story and the elevator will be no different from the first building to the last building in relationship to Eastern Avenue.
Right.
Gotcha.
And Eastern Avenue is fairly flat in that area. It doesn't rise much more than a foot or two either direction.
Mhm.
But if you want to pull up page 8 and 9 while we're waiting for Mark of the staff
Yeah,
report.
I'm there. Yep.
Okay. So if you can pull that, share that on the screen.
Oh, share it. Sure.
Because I'm looking at a miniature version of it. It's hard to see the lines on there.
Okay. Can you all see that?
Yeah. So they show existing grade and they show proposed grade. The height for the parallelogram is taken from existing grade, not the proposed grade. And in most cases on this, the existing grade is much lower than the proposed grade, which adds to the height of the request out front.
Okay.
Does it, you follow that?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, if like here, it's more on these other lots, you can see that that bold line comes down deeper, well below the curb, because that's where the existing grade is. Even though the existing grade is going to be coming up 8 more feet or whatever that is, I can't read it.
Finished grade, yeah.
Yeah, to finish grade.
So the buildings are no taller out of the ground when they're finished than the first one is, which was approved with a slight, it was a few feet variance, I believe.
I don't think so.
Gotcha. Okay.
That's
So
the
are you
original-
saying,
our original building?
among other things, are you saying here that the height variance is necessary to keep a uniform appearance of the buildings?
Well, no, not necessarily. The buildings are going to be set in relationship to the street, obviously. So as we move down towards the last lots, which is A and let's see, E, F, and yeah, like lots I, J, and K and L, what happens because the grade is actually lower than the street, that is where the height variance is based off of. So we're already at a 6 or 8 foot loss, I guess, in height, that even though our first floor is going to maintain at the same point. So I mean, it's, I guess in real life, every building down through there is going to be at the same height from the street.
Yeah, so you don't have to walk down steps to get to your front door. You're going to walk across a relatively flat front yard to your front porch and then go into your house.
Yeah.
And they'll all have the same basic feel going along there.
So in other words, it's just the elevator or the height variance is distorted because of the existing grades and how that is calculated. In actuality, when those products are finished, they are going to be, you know, basically the same height off the street all the way down through. The appearance will be exactly the same. If we were to follow and not ask for a variance on those last lots, you would actually walk down to the front door, you know, from the street. And that's what we're obviously trying to avoid, with the fact that we put in a driveway to the rear, you know, based upon grades and everything, so that those elevations back there are kind of preset for the garages. So that and the foundation heights and different things have, you know, all gone together to determine where we set these houses at.
Well, let's talk a little bit about why the elevator shaft that we proposed is what we feel is necessary for this market and for these houses. These are all lead houses. We put geothermal in all the houses, even though the tax abatement credits are not going to be what they were. You know, we will still be building green. A lot of our roofs will be designed to have living roofs. They'll have, you know, planters and stuff so that they can do that. So to make these things handicap accessible for the roofs, that is plus if you're doing gardening, whatever it is, I'm sure that every house is not going to have a handicap, but if you have an elderly parent that wants to, go up to the rooftop garden, there is no other really site on or area on the sites that you can have a rooftop garden. They have total southern exposure, which is premium. We're working with Gail Frazier, our landscape architect, to come up with a variety of things that we can use as a sales tool to promote green building on these upper terraces. It's really going to be sensational. And to have that elevator access is mandatory to have any kind of rooftop access. And so we've made it as narrow and small as it can. We can't really relocate the elevator anywhere else without moving the stairs in the design. So if you look at the floor plans, it's everything's where it is for a reason.
In actuality, if you would take the elevator and try to meet at the height restrictions, it would move towards the front of the building to get into that parallelogram to help with that height restriction. So, I mean, obviously, we don't want to do that one because it works where it's at and within the building footprint and floor plan.
Gotcha. But you're saying that the elevator is needed for the roof access, or just needed for roof access for people that have a disability?
I think it's both, because if you're doing gardening, to bring materials up a spiral stair is not the easiest thing to do when you're working on a rooftop. These are rooftops that are designed to build.
They're for living, for actually, This is their yard. This is part of their yard, which obviously we don't have within the footprint of the building. We've moved that area up above to the upper terrace and to the terrace levels.
And the yard was eliminated, a rear yard opportunity was eliminated with the drive. We do have detention ponds back there on either side of the access drive. So there's really, that's all common area now. That'll just be natural areas. So if you want to do some individual, farming at home or whatever your product is that you're going to be putting up there, yes, I believe that is absolutely necessary.
Okay.
Mark, you're back with us?
I think so.
Sounds
Apologies.
like it.
Did I answer part of his question for you?
Yeah, I think you did. I think you and Mr. McGee did answer that. Mark, is there anything else you wanted to add? Or Peter, did you have any questions for Mark?
No, I think we're, like I said, I believe that it was down to, at our last meeting, just to finish answering your question on that, it was down to, I didn't want to have permanent restrictions at that point because we didn't know what this building was going to look like. This building is coming in a lot more expensive because of the foundation and the piers. So our price point is rising. We just want to, now that we're doing it, we want to do the same thing over and over, because that's kind of how you learn how to build in this business. Is you build one, you build a structure, you know what it costs, and you do it again. And I think we've got a great plan.
Okay. All right, great. I think I'll go ahead and give Mr. Sheldon an opportunity to weigh in here.
Sure. I guess my at least one of my concerns as far as the development to the north, which planners, city planners Andy Yingling and then Mr. Weaver as well, both had the similar concern that it would be creating your own hardship, and Peter alluded to that. Obviously, I didn't have the benefit of a drawing for that until just this morning.
Yeah. When you say to the north, Mr. Sheldon, can you be more specific?
The
What exactly are you
53 or so odd lots that Mr. McGarry was referring to, which he would call Tusculum Ridge North. When all this, before this ever went to planning commission, it came in kind of as a preliminary review, and we did an overview with the planners before it even went to coordinated site or anything, coordinated site review, just to get a feel for what was being proposed. And we had voiced concern that I hope it makes sense that you could essentially be creating your own hardship if you built something at a certain height and, on the lower ground, that then you got back to the river out on the other side of the street and would want to build even higher to see over the top of all of what you were building. This was just a preliminary concern, and it's something that, frankly, until Mr. Walker provided the schematic this morning, I didn't know what they would propose up there. Does that make sense? Just on that particular issue?
Yeah, but that would be an issue that would be more pertinent to the Tusculum North development, right?
Right, yes, but if you look at this overall, which we did at the very beginning before, some years ago, we were looking at it, was a concern that we voiced, because blocking view sheds and other things is an important consideration. It's one of the parts of the hillside standards that you look at. So it was just a red flag that was raised. That, hey, what if you essentially are creating your own hardship, and later on say, hey, we need a 57-foot tall building or whatever behind this to get a full view of the valley below. Does that make sense?
Makes sense. Yeah.
Okay, so that was one concern. Assuming they're going with the stepped design up above that Mr. Walker provided, I guess they have multiple different options there, but that does show a stepped design on the Tusculum Ridge North. So I guess my question is, if you can step the one to the north, why can't why can't this be stepped? That's one point that I made. Would like to address. Of course, I didn't have time to do much time to think about this or incorporate any of that in my staff report because it hadn't been submitted yet. I can't, as a matter of fact, with this isn't some kind of traditional or hipped roof where someone's trying to step down gradually with gables. Usually on some of these that are more modern, if you will, with flat roofs, we typically see stepping of some sort. To step into the hillside. I provided multiple examples of it that were provided with the staff report, and quite simply here, if you didn't have an upper roof deck, you'd have a pretty substantial deck, which is now covered. Right, there's a covered porch below it, David. If you were to look at the elevation drawing, there's a covered porch immediately below that for most people would be a pretty substantial amenity. Which would have sunlight and so on. It does somewhat, but if it wasn't covered, that would certainly, help with the stepping here. So I couldn't find, as a matter of fact, that this was stepped. It just simply wasn't. I did, however, speak to, in fairness to them and to the circumstances they found themselves in. I did address it, both Mr. Walker and Mr. McGarry noted that. I did note that a lot of the discrepancies of the height are in fact due to the fact that the ground falls off as you go eastward. And I have to look at these from the standpoint of existing grade as a datum for measuring upward and downward, both for the height and for the cumulative excavation and fill. That's simply how it's done. So I do agree with them that there is that does create maybe 6 to 8 feet of difference in the heights as you head eastward. So those lots that are like L and M are inherently, they're just simply going to be more fill up front. They aren't putting it's not a bridge or something going across. They're just going to put more fill in to fill that gap and have a sidewalk, a little walkway leading to the front door. So I do certainly agree that affects the height measurement overall. For example, they're asking for 15.75 feet of height relief for lots L and M. And I do agree with them that number is not as substantial as it would otherwise seem because of the fact that these are actually from the street and we're going to present as uniform in height. I just couldn't, as a matter of fact, find that they legitimately stepped this design as the hillside asks you to, the hillside regulations. It's just simply not stepped. So I do see some mitigating factors in there for them. I also wrote in there that and this is something Mr. McGarry alluded to, is that and Mr. McGee, I believe, is that the elevator towers do not obstruct all the way across. They're not a party room or something up there that blocks the entirety of it. So in terms of that aspect of it, there are going to be wide gaps as far as the massing that allows visibility through those. Nonetheless, that's not stepping. And the ZBA clearly found in its 2016 decision that roof towers like this are not an allowable building projection. They have to go through relief if you're going to try to use them. So they're not like a cupola or some other architectural feature. They're literally part of the building. And so part of the occupiable space, if you will. So for my part, there wasn't substantial stepping. I think that they better addressed having heard testimony and having had I realize you haven't had time to read some of the additional information, and I did not have time to upload it all because it just came scattershot. But to reiterate on some of my concern about the Tusculum North development and the impact that this would have had on those heights and on the views from them has been alleviated somewhat by them providing that additional information this morning. And I feel like I have a better understanding for why they needed to have essentially what acts as a retaining wall on the back of the dwellings, coming up from those piers. I have a better understanding of why that had to go to the depth that it did, if that was all backfill throughout there. So a better understanding of that. I guess all having been said, I still can't find that they've tried to step this more modern building as far as the roof line goes. It's not like the one directly across the street that Mr. Walker just showed you, where it steps. Like there's a terrace and there's a roof part, and then it drops down, and then a terrace below. So and most of those that we typically see on modern ones like this do legitimately go through a stepping. There's a setback area on the top floor, and then it drops down, and there's often then the roof deck or terrace out from it, and that's just not the case here.
Okay. Thanks, Trey. Anything else you wanted to add on this?
No, I think that if you have time to get through the additional information they provided, I think it was somewhat helpful. And I think that the testimony as far as the from the geotechnical and all aspects, all three aspects of the engineering, I think that was helpful to hear that testimony with respect to the stepping for into the foundation, right, for the foundation. I might have had a different finding in my staff report had I had a clearer sense of how much that was necessary to support the actual street. But I still kind of hold my ground with the fact that there's no stepping, no apparent stepping as far as the elevation goes, as far as height.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Trey.
Yep.
Appreciate it. Peter, any response to anything Trey provided?
Just real quick, Mark, could you pull up and share your screen with the elevation between Tusculum Ridge South and North? You're on mute. You're still on mute. There you go.
Okay, I can do that. Let's see, I can't do everything I was doing before because I'm on a different computer, but I can share that one.
Trey, can you share that?
No.
The elevation.
If he's already doing it, I'd have to go into my email and so on.
Okay, no, that's fine. We'll let Mark do it.
And if that doesn't work, I can try.
Let's see. Is my screen shared?
No.
It'd be nice to get some face-to-face meetings sometime.
Yeah, it's some people like the virtual aspect, and for some cases it's not as useful. Mark or Peter, okay, there we go.
I think,
There we go.
okay. So real quickly, the shaded area, Trey, on the Tuscan Bridge North, that's not necessarily stepping. We do have a retaining wall system that we've worked with the city and our geotech. Mark, could you just show where that wall is behind the foundation?
Yes.
No, you can just show it on the shaded area if you want.
Yeah, there's a wall that sits right in here.
And that goes down quite a bit into bedrock,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's about 20 feet.
about 20 feet into bedrock. So
No, the height, the wall height is about 20 feet on the average. Don't-
yeah, so we're not necessarily stepping it into the foundation there. We are, yeah. That
And
pier
again,
goes,
we're talking about, this is a future plan for Tusculum North, which has not gone through any of the permitting process yet.
right, I'm sorry. I was trying to answer Trey's question about stepping. We're not necessarily stepping this because we had to, again, we push them back so that we didn't have all these curb cuts, 53 curb cuts along Eastern. We have to push these buildings back. When we push them back, it gets into the hillside. So we put in another retaining wall system to effectively build these without a problem.
But the part that I was actually referring to is to elevation, stepping us to elevation. The way that you do that is more typical of what we have seen in hillsides, but other projects and so on.
Trey,
I was
are
just-
you saying step, when you say elevation, you mean step from building to building, they change height a little bit, right?
No, from front to back, like this is shown to be stepped down. That's what I think he's saying.
Yes,
Well, why don't we ask Trey what he's saying?
yeah, that is what I'm saying. That's not with the other projects, some of which I provided as examples in my staff report. Some of the ones that Mr. Cirque did on Feimster and other streets, there's been, especially on a lot more modern design like this, there's been a clear step, such as you're showing in the shaded area on the eventual proposal for that. And I'm just saying
Excuse me,
here,
Trey, are you talking about the step that's on the upper floor versus the foundation itself?
I'm
Yeah,
talking
he's
about
talking about the building itself.
just the
Pardon?
height. Yes, there's the height of the buildings that are in Tusculum Ridge South. The top of it does not step into the parallelogram like the one that you've shown on the left.
Is that a requirement?
Well,
I know
it's-
the step, the stepping you've asked for, you talked about the stepping in the foundations for stepping into the hillside. Is the stepping above part of the, I guess, suggested method, or is it a requirement?
Well, it's part of how people end up working on the projects with us to reduce the extent of their maximum building envelope. So for example, on this one, you have like the 11 or so feet where a part of the roof and a part of the second floor projects up.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure. The house that you talked about on Donnelly Street, I actually designed that for Peter years ago. So that was interesting to see that in the package there.
We typically think of the stepping as both in the foundations. We do not count drilled piers, for example, in our excavation calculations because they are drilled.
Yes.
So those are not your traditional, you don't go in there with a backhoe or whatever to do that. Where it's trenched. So that's already understood that the drilled piers are the preferred method of doing things to get down to the bedrock. That makes just too much.
I'm sorry, Trey. Yeah, that's what I was wondering, whether you're talking about stepping the foundations or stepping the upper floors. So
it does both essentially in most, a lot of the plans, both of these things are present. And I was just referring to the upper floor, having that.
yeah, so to get some living space on these narrow houses, it is required that we have these floors kind of stacked on these modern houses. But hopefully, you've answered my question as to stepping. If you want to go on to the next question.
Yeah, so let me stop the share here. My initial question to you was, did you have any response, or did you want to say anything in response to Trey's comments?
Yeah, because he was talking about the north and south, I thought I needed that as an illustration, but we'll send you that stuff. And another thing is the things that were sent today were really because we just got our package like last week that we were able to share with our team. And so we came up with some stuff, and then we had a long holiday weekend that we had to snarl in there. So that's why I started binging you guys this morning with some of the stuff we put together. We came in yesterday or on Monday and had a meeting, and we couldn't do that on Monday. And then we found out that Cassandra was off. So emails were blasting all over the place. We apologize for that. Normally we're more organized. I would like to show one other demonstration. Mark, you had a set of photos that I sent with existing jobs that we've done and other jobs like for Homerama where.
And Peter, just to be clear, none of the information or none of the documents that you attempted to send out this morning changed or updated the design or the plans from the original application material. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, these are just supplemental sort of demonstrative
Yeah,
docs. Okay, thank you.
exactly. We've not asked for anything additional. But this is a house that we built on Bull Street, and it's 1, 2, 3, 4 stories. We didn't put an upper terrace on this one because they did solar and geothermal on this particular house. Go to another one, Mark. These are ones that are not Homerama, but right below Homerama. The rears of the houses where they're 1, 2, 3, 4, and somehow the upper terrace, 5th stories on them. And they're very similar to ours out front, where they have 2 or 3 stories out front, but they have 4 or 5 stories in the back. Let's go to another one, Mark. The same, these are going down the street. I didn't show the Homeramas because I just didn't have any current photos of them. Let's go to another one. That's us. This is an interesting, because you can see the old ranch next to ours here. It's just Eastern Avenue has a lot of very old housing stock that will be replaced over the next 5 to 20 years. Let's go to the next one, Mark.
I think that was it on
the photos. Okay.
Yeah,
I was having a hard time because I couldn't get them uploaded to the system. So the fact is that the Homerama site on Walworth down the street and Riverside Drive has a lot of the same type of buildings that we are building already here. And we just wanted to point that out, that we're not trying to do something new. And our view from the street is much less than a lot of the the other houses, which can go to 3 stories out front. So that's all. The only additional information was more to help you.
Sure.
Can
That makes sense.
Can I also add something?
Sure.
Oh, okay. These buildings on Tusculum, because of the nature of the site and the fact that we have to hold back the street and the entire hillside with these buildings, we have the stepping that we had to do was in the building itself, along the front. That's why we step the building in and out to create enough buttress to support the hillside. If we don't have hillside issues, it would be easier to just build a straight face building and then step it down, and then you can build a longer building in a case like that. But on this side, you can't do that because you are limited by by the fact that you have to hold the hillside up you have to do all these perpendicular walls that will help to stabilize the site. So all that money could have been put into redoing the house and doing the steps, but we don't have for these houses to be able to be built, you probably have to build it the way they've done it. So that's why I would say it will be hard to do that many steps that the city is looking for at a site like this. So if I don't know if that helps at all, but I thought I should mention that.
No,
Because some of these houses that they show the buildings stepping down, some of them are quite long. They're long buildings, probably longer than the ones that we're building on this site. So when the buildings are that long, you might be able to step the building down and still have enough room to create the opportunity for the people buying the house. But on the hillside, on the kind of site that we have limited room to put the building, and then you have to spend all that money to do all the extra walls to hold the street and the hillside. That might limit the ability to be able to step the buildings down. So maybe that kind of dictates the way that building is built. I thought I should mention that.
Thanks,
Sure.
Shagan.
Yeah.
Okay, so looks like I think I have actually a really good idea of what the proposal is, and why you all believe the relief is necessary. We're just about an hour and 40 now. So Peter, I'm gonna give you or anyone else an opportunity to make any closing remarks or otherwise before we go ahead and adjourn here today.
Yeah, I guess I'll take the lead because my ass is on the line. Excuse me. We've got, we started investing along Eastern Avenue in 2016. It was when we started picking up the first properties. We're still picking them up. We're not picking up properties that are houses. We generally are picking up vacant land. Of all the property we have 2 houses on them. One is being rented still. The other is condemned, and we have it boarded up, and we'll take that down when we start working on Tusculum Ridge North. We have a lot of respect for the existing people in the neighborhoods. We have a lot of tremendous respect for the city staff. In fact, in 2016, when we first started picking up we went to the city before we had pen to paper on these decisions, and it was brought to our attention by, sure it was Matt Shad, that we need to think about eliminating curb cuts because of the traffic problems along Eastern Avenue. So we took that to heart from day one of our design. We were actually working on Tusculum Ridge North prior to saying, okay, let's put in Tusculum Ridge South and get that going, because the other one, we still have pieces to add to it. So we have partners, we have a great staff that we've put together of geotech, structural engineer, site engineer, architect, and we follow their instructions. Most of these houses are done with special instructions necessary by having either our geotech or a structural engineer come and inspect what we do, because the steel and the engineering of these buildings is outside of the expertise that a building inspector can handle on site. So we take a lot of the recommendations and we've incorporated them into our design. We would like to ask for your approval. We'd like to continue to work with city staff in the future within the city, even though these tax abatements were a big carrot. We're going to continue to invest in the city. So we're ready to go on Tusculum Ridge South.
Okay. All right, great. Well, let's leave it at that. So yeah, this is a lot of information. I want to be certain that I've reviewed all of the materials, particularly the ones you wanted to submit today. So Mr. McGarry, again, if you could, or anyone on the team here, if you could package those together and send them to me via email. My email is in my box here. I would appreciate it. I'll take a look at those. I think I'm going to, since one of or two of these are already almost complete, I think I'm going to head down there and just take a look, get my eyes on it, and then come back, make a decision. Like I said in the beginning, that typically takes about 2 weeks. I think that's a realistic expectation based on my current queue of cases. And yeah, again, I'll review everything. I'll formalize a decision, a written decision. And I will, as soon as I finish that, I put it into PDF and email it to everybody in the hearing here today. So you all have a copy of it really just moments after it's complete. And if it is approved, Trey can sign off on the zoning permitting at that time. If you have questions about the process or anything else, in the meantime, feel free to reach out to me directly. I'm happy to answer any questions. If you'd like a status update on the decision, also, I'm happy to answer any questions. Outside of the information that you're going to share with me this afternoon after the meeting is over, I can't take any new evidence or hear any new arguments. So correspondence will have to be limited to just process related questions. Anything else right now? Any other questions right now about any of that?
Now, should I copy Trey on anything I send to you?
Sure, you can if you'd like.
Okay, I don't want to overwhelm anyone, but I don't want you to think that it'll be the same stuff that we floated around this morning, a little unorganized.
No, that's totally fine. No problem
really
at all.
The only suggestion that we did make that we would change is we don't mind eliminating that hash out area that was the city's concern in the planning commission original. We have no problem if they sign off. If you sign off on this to eliminate that hashed out red box, which we will send you out from consideration for future sites of these 10 sites that are left. The only protrusion that we're looking for on the upper terrace would be the elevator shaft.
Right.
We don't need to, we don't want to add additional rooms up there.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, so any approval that I would make today or on this particular application, and again, I have this for lots C through L, which I think amounts to 10
That's
total
correct.
homes here. They would be, that approval would all be any changes to design or plans or anything like that would need to come back through me anyways.
Okay.
It's the approvals are all based on the plans and the designs that you have submitted with these application materials.
Fair enough.
Yeah. But okay.
Just to clarify something, Peter, just by the way, David, these are not in for permitting right now. This was preliminary zoning review that I was doing with Peter and with Mark. So it's not, there are no building permits pending.
Okay.
But I will state that if there are any kind of projections or box gutters, some kind of details that make these architecturally different, but that don't affect the building envelope, those would be non-substantial changes. I'm just letting Peter and Mr. McGee, the architect, know that it's only something that would change the setbacks or the height or something like that. That is not approvable. Anything that goes up into that MBE area. So as long as you're below that with any kind of like I said, some kind of box cutter or a molding or something like that to provide architectural distinction between these two different dwellings, cladding, whatnot. That would all be fine. It just can't expand beyond the MBE.
Understand. Thanks for the clarification.
Yeah, thank you, Trey, for that clarification. That's very helpful. Okay, guys. Well, thank you all for your time and your testimony here today. Hope everyone has a good rest of their day. We are adjourned, and I'll look for those documents